Let me take you with me into the wilderness of Alaska for a moment. I was there in 2015 on my heavy loaded bicycle on a quest to ride around the state and south from there. I'd never been in such pristine and vast wilderness before, and I was a little nervous about what was to come. The first few days, I was riding the main roads and in the vicinity of people and towns, but then I took a turn off and I started rolling on a dirt road called Denali Highway, which stretched through the wilderness over the length of 220 kilometers between two towns. At the last roadhouse I stopped at, they had told me this area is crowded with bears, black bears and grizzly bears. So I had bought a bear spray, which is like a big, strong pepper spray, and a little bell, which is a bear bell, to hang off your clothes or bags so the bears can hear you coming and you don't surprise them. It's not that they're afraid of bells. At the end of the afternoon, I found a nice open spot at the side of a river to set up camp. So I pitched my tent and I cooked a meal, the bear spray on my left, the bear bell on my right, and I every now and then nervously jingled it. And after I finished, I washed my pots and put one pannier with the pots and the food 100 meters away from me in the bush as not to attract bears to my tent. So I made a little fire and I tried to calm my nerves a bit, reading a book. And then suddenly, from out of the water, I heard a really loud splashing sound. And another one. Not the sound of a fish. So I got my bear spray and my bear bell, and I carefully tiptoed to the water side, and from behind the bush, at 40 meters distance, I saw a big, brown, hairy hump sticking out of the water. A big animal. My heartbeat raced, and another splash. And a head came up, and I looked straight into the eyes of a big, brown lady moose, calmly chewing some water plants. I sighed with relief. No grizzly on my first night out in the wild. So, instead of the comfort and the safety of a bedroom for the night and the regularity and predictability of a job during daytime, I chose to spend a few adventurous years traveling by bicycle. I rode literal paths across continents while searching my own figurative path in life. I wondered if and how I could learn from people around the world. And I did learn a lot. But I also found that it's not just a matter of monkey see and monkey do. But to explain this well, we'll have to start by going 30 years back in time. I didn't grow up like a Mowgli or even in the countryside, but with my mother and brother in a terraced house in an average-sized Dutch city. And when me and my brother were young, we used to play with Lego. And we had those square Lego plates that formed the basis to build on. A green one and a gray one with a smooth road printed on it. Nature and urban area. Just like real life, I thought. I remember my preference for the green one. I could picture a little farmhouse on it with cows and horses, or a little hut in a forest. When I was about the age of 11, inspired by a book I'd read, I'd fantasized about living in a tree house, calmly, wandering the forest with my dog and hunting with bow and arrow. I had no idea that 20 years later, I would spend a considerable amount of time in faster and wilder nature than I'd ever imagined. And many nights at a fire outside my tent underneath the stars. But first, I went to study on a gray Lego plate. As a student, I got fully absorbed in city life, a busy schedule of studying, going out, spending time with friends, trying to look good, and trying to meet the prevailing standards in order to fit in. And I succeeded quite well in that attempt. But on the inside, it left me struggling. Because on the inside, I still felt like that girl who dreamed about calmly living in a treehouse and wandering the forest. But instead of calm, now life seemed like a fast-moving train full of people with similar expectations, standards, and a communal destination. A university degree, a successful career, a house, a partner, making good money, and spending it on stuff. I felt like I was hanging off this train by one arm, not knowing how to get on it and if that was even what I really wanted, but also scared to be left behind and alone. The train hurled on and several years went by, but my agitation and doubts didn't settle. I thought there had to be more than just following this beaten track. And so I left, answering to the call of the treehouse girl who preferred the green Lego plate. I left the city and the regulations and expectations behind, and I set out on a journey. I got on my bicycle, heading east, and I moved at a slow pace, seeing the faces of the people aside the road, every tree, every house, every village. I crossed vast areas of steppe, forest, and jungle, riding several days without finding a city on my way. And it was then and there that I realized in depth that the world isn't made up out of green and gray Lego plates laid down end to end in a considerate order. Those green Lego plates that I'd always considered to be part of that patchwork, in real life, they weren't plates at all. No one has put them there. Actually, those green Lego plates just render the essence of our planet. It's where the healthy stuff grows, that feeds us, where the water comes from, that hydrates us, the oxygen we breathe. It's where all life has taken place for millions of years, where we go to feel calm when we're stressed or anxious, and where we love to take pictures of when we're on holidays so we can hang them on our walls. The walls of our homes, of concrete, steel, and glass, on those gray Lego plates we laminated the planet with. I was curious to see how people from other countries and cultures had designed their lives. And to witness it from close by, I knocked on many doors, and I would ask people to let me camp on their property. Many of them would actually take me in the house, offer me a bed, and feed me. And to my surprise, resulting in gratitude often from both parties. Mine, obviously, for such great hospitality, but theirs often too, for making them part of an adventure, and that also inspired them. A huge relief for me was traveling east was that the people I met didn't hold me to a standard. We were different in so many ways that our usual standards just didn't apply. I was an atypical Western woman riding a heavy-loaded bicycle, unwashed, alone, looking overheated or undercooled most of the time. They were nomads living in yurts in Kyrgyzstan, 3 or 4 generation families on the Ukrainian countrysides, and the men at a road workers camp in winter in Bulgaria. I looked at their lives as an outsider, like watching Discovery Channel, observing. But somewhere between the tragic circumstances of the native communities in Alaska that I witnessed and the smoothly cut lawns and waving stars and stripes in Idaho that I passed by, that changed. In a part of the world that I always thought to be quite similar to home, I was shocked and deeply touched by the segregation and inequality between 2 communities living so closely together. Till then, I'd placed myself apart from the people I'd met along the way, as with our different backgrounds and cultures as a supposed barrier for reflection. But suddenly I felt that to really understand and learn from these people, I had to let my guard down and become receptive. to dare to relate to them, and to let their lives touch mine. So I look back. I look back at the encounters with the nomads, the Ukrainian families, the Bulgarian road workers, and the many other people I met along the way. And in hindsight, I realized that some of these people were just following their local beaten track. And some of them were looking for alternative paths to go. While others, like those Native Americans in Alaska, whose land got stolen and culture destroyed, were brutally forced by others to lay out new trails. All people born by chance in a specific place and situation in the world, all just looking to be happy. Often with limited resources and within a tight parameter, not having the privilege I have to just cross borders as I please. There are, especially for those born in first world countries, innumerous paths to choose from and ways to design our lives. And just because one is the most conventional and at first sight might be the most convenient, doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best option for you or for the world. I cycled on and off Lego plates and in and out of nature, and I came across incredible views. Ice-cold glacier rivers, colorful northern wetlands, and an accidental bear or moose. I spent a lot of time there by myself, but I hardly ever felt lonely. The pristine wilderness made me feel more in tune than I'd ever felt. Whether I found myself surrounded by gigantic sequoia trees in Oregon or prickly brush and cacti in Mexico. Until I cycled on to the next gray Lego plate. Surrounded by concrete, glass, car fumes, people rushing, buses honking, I felt small and vulnerable. And I looked at the hasty people in the streets and the dressed up girls in cafes that I couldn't compare to. And it reminded me of how I'd lived and felt back home. Trying to keep up, trying to fit in. And I realized I changed. But by letting go of that fast-moving train that it meant so much to stay on board, I hadn't lost a single thing that's essential to my happiness. Instead, during this journey, I'd felt more happy than ever before. I started making connections and comparisons. The homegrown veggies of Eastern Europe versus our prepackaged, manipulated foods in the supermarkets. The no hurry, no worry credo in Laos versus our ever-rising bars of how and who to be. The calm and peacefulness of people living in nature versus urban life with its highly increased risk of burnout, depression, and anxiety. The open doors and warm hospitality I'd experienced versus closed curtains and busy agendas. And I knew I wanted my further path to be a more natural one of modesty and simplicity. From my perspective, the essence of life is not on that gray Lego plate. It's not in most of the things we stress over or chase after on it. It's not in reaching those high bars, getting more stuff, looking good and being admired. I found the essence to be lying in nature, which has fueled and nurtured humanity from its start and still does. And that we, even if we put Lego plates on top of it to live on, cannot do without. And it's in our nature as humans. Our nature to connect to other humans and our talent to share, to learn, to collaborate, and to make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. I'm not going to advise you to pack your bags tonight and start riding east in the morning. Because besides the common grounds, we all have different natures And it can be quite challenging to figure out which path, road, or trail is right for you. But my gentle recommendation, based on what I've learned during these travels, is to choose a path where somewhere you'll find nature, challenges to take on, and strangers to learn from along the way. Thank you.